Okay. Hello. Where are we? Okay. You can hear me, right? You can't see me. You can't see me, but you can hear me. That's good. I've got a little like intro video, very brief one from Jevin that I'm just gonna play because it's funny and it's better if I do it first because he suggested I do it today and it's appropriate. So yeah, so let's do that first. A little intro video, and then we'll get started. Here we go.
Tonight, James wears a hat. James wears a different hat. And James wears a hat.
Practical composure on our podcast.
And then, of course, I am, in fact, wearing a hat today. So it was just an appropriate day. It was an appropriate day for the intro to go first because I happened to be wearing a hat, and he said, hey, he's never used this one. And yeah, I know it'll be copyrighted, but that's fine. I'll just remove the audio from the VOD. It's not a big deal. That doesn't bother me. I knew that would happen. It's okay. It's okay. Anyway, how are we doing today? How is everybody? Good? Bad? Whatever. Fall is finally arrived here, so you know, it's cold. It's cold. Or it's getting cold. It's getting cold. So it's sweater and hat season. To some degree. I'm not a huge hat guy, but yeah, it's getting cold, so it's time to some degree to wear hats. But yeah, the lawn is, I mean, it's alive, but I don't know if they're mowing anymore. How are we? How have you all been over this international break? It feels like it's been forever. I don't know if it's just me, but it truly feels like this has been by far the longest international break that I can remember. It feels like it's been ages. Like I'm not saying I've missed us playing. I'm just saying it feels like it's been forever. It just feels like it's been a long time. But I traveled and stuff too, so maybe that's part of it. It's just me. Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's gonna get much better when we come back to playing, and that suddenly it's gonna feel a lot better. So yeah, what do we want to talk about today? A few things. Yeah, we'll talk about the Ogden article and all of that. Do I miss us playing? Here's the thing, right? Like I always do until like 20 minutes in. I think that's how most of us feel. That we miss us playing until we play, and then we don't. But then it's like we do, and it's been painful. It's been painful, but a lot has happened. Make sure to like the stream and all of that as we get started here. And I got a few things to discuss. I want to talk about the hate along. We're gonna do a watch along tomorrow for sure. We're gonna talk about, what are we talking about? We're gonna talk about Ten Hag and all of that because I made a video yesterday, kind of going over everything, right? Talking about where things have been at on the replacements, on the discussions, on all of that, and where things ended up in the break, as well as Thomas Tuchel. We'll talk about the plans for the future, as well. We will talk about a lot of that. Okay. Yeah, women's team are doing well. Women's team are doing well. That's good news as well. Yeah, I mean, I could talk about that article. Did I read the whole thing? There's parts of it that I've said before, that are correct. Let's just start there real quick then. Fine, I'll open this article up and we can talk about it really quickly. Oh, and we're also going to do our vote for the squad, which changed last time. Let's see. I'll look at this and let me tell you what part of it that I've spoken about in the past. I'm not saying that the other parts aren't true, because it's Rob Dawson and Mark Ogden, and as I know, Rob Dawson, very, very, very well sourced individual, and usually he says things that are true. So, I mean, it is what it is, right? If that's the case. There's a couple things in here. I don't think this thing over Sir Alex is a big deal. I think that people are making a big deal out of it. I don't think it's a big deal. He talked about that yesterday. I wouldn't even say it's the first time that we've encountered sort of the stories about this. I think that a lot of fans have been saying for a while, does Sir Alex really need to be involved in a lot of the stuff that we do? Does it really matter? I mean, I'm not, and that's not an insult to Sir Alex. It's just that, we convinced all of the players this summer, Lenny Yoro, all of that, with some strategies. Didn't really involve Sir Alex. We used former players, things like that. The last thing I can remember him being involved in, right, was Jude Bellingham's thing, and we didn't sign him directly. But regardless, I get the optics of it, but in that respect, I think the criticism is weird because, I get it. I get the optics of it. Yeah, I do get that. But so what? I mean, that's one of the things that they're doing right. Hello, Steve. One of the things that they're doing right is making those hard choices. And I know that these things are unpopular off the pitch. We know, right? When we look into these articles, I'm not saying these things aren't true, right? About people being upset about staff departures, about people crying, about, these kinds of things, about all of that. All true. Doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do at the same time, right? This is okay. This is okay. I understand how sad it is that a kit man of 30 years is crying and all that. And I said in some of the things recently, you can see if you go on LinkedIn, right? You can see if you go on LinkedIn, every day someone is leaving United. 5, 6 people. But it's not just the kitmen, right? It's executives, it's department heads, it's a lot of people. And so it's very emotional, but it's also, it's a football club. And we kind of know it's bloated. Now, I know that at the same time, it's very frustrating. Hi, Nick. And thank you again for being a member. But it's very frustrating when people are, it feels like because the money that you look at, right, for saving on this one guy is so minimal compared to the cost of the players or Ten Hag or Bruno's contract or these types of things, that it's it feels silly, but it isn't at the same time. It's it's necessary because it's a football club. And whether they do right by picking the right players or doing this or that doesn't mean the general overall view of it is wrong, right? This is, people ask for open heart surgery. You're right. That's what it looks like. You change everything. You rip it all out. The business is underperforming. The business is bloated. The business is inflated. This is what happens. The jobs don't exist just to exist. They have to serve a purpose that helps it's different. It's different whether you're, because when you go spend money on a player, and it doesn't work out, the person who spent that money is incompetent. They did a bad thing. They performed poorly in their job. Okay, well, if there's a bunch of jobs that aren't doing anything, that aren't adding to the success of the club, well, that's the same thing, even though the money scales are different. So, yeah, look, of course, the media are playing on that emotional stuff, right? Like, of course, it's what they're going to do, and it's understandable. That's where you're going to get the stories, and that's where you're going to get it, and that's where you're going to get all of this. And look, it didn't take long. It didn't take long. We're 7 or 8 months into Ineos taking over, and you get in the big, long kind of like hit pieces. I'm not surprised. It didn't take long. What were they going to do? You know, if any owner came in, guess what? This is what would have happened. If the Glazers were competent, this is what would have happened. It would have happened no matter what if the club was being run appropriately. So the fact that it isn't doesn't really change anything for me. It doesn't really change anything. So anyway, it's yeah, it is what it is. The things that are true in there and where it seems kind of frustrating is that like what they're doing. Yeah, those are football expenses. It's all PSO. Those are all things that count, Those are all expenses. The expenses of the club all count, for PSR. They do. Everything that it costs to run the club does. Outside of, again, we talked about like you get deductions for women's, the academy teams, these other aspects. But these are all considered things that would contribute towards the men's team. The other aspects of it, though, that are correct and that we obviously know is that like they're doing the business ruthlessness, the things you would expect anybody who's running a big business to do, and that is necessary. But at the same time, it feels like they're being very, very soft and slow when it comes to, essentially the manager situation. And it felt that way since summer, right? That what happened in summer was a bit of a mess. And it's weird to me, as I said before, that they see business strategies that make a successful and profitable business differently to football, because in a lot of ways they're the same thing. You have to see high performance and all of that, and you hire and fire quickly. When you're hiring people and you're letting them go, you actually do it fairly quickly. Stories about Brailsford turning up in a suit. I mean, what is he not supposed to wear a suit? Are we talking about a cream suit? Is he a Barack Obama now, where you have to write a story about what color suit he's wearing? That matters? It doesn't matter. It means nothing. That to me is it's just nonsense. That to me is the type of bullshit you throw out. You can say it turns you off, fine. But that's the type of that is garbage to me, personally. When you start commenting on things like that as a means of criticizing. Who gives a shit what color his suit was? Footballers wear dumbass jewelry, clothing all the time. That looks terrible. Who cares? It's just like, these things don't matter. These things don't matter. Those are the type of comments that, add color, but are meaningless. But that a lot of traditional media love talking about those types of things, who cares? Like who cares about that? If he sat there and said that, he's come down from his wealthy home to help to fix United, fine. If those words are true, they could be a bit cringe or whatever, but it doesn't matter. Everything is about framing. Everything is about framing. Everything is about framing. If you're successful, everything that you say sounds good. If you're unsuccessful, everything that you say sounds shitty. And that's the reality of it. Those are the types of things that don't matter. What matters is what you accomplish and what is being accomplished, right? And so those are the type of things I don't really care about any of that stuff. That kind of stuff is meaningless for me. It all comes down to what you say. What you do, not what you say. What actually gets done and what have you accomplished? Are there things that Ineos have done well so far? Yeah. Are they showing, to me, softness on the manager front? Yeah, too much. At the same time, we've been asking for the owners to not get involved. And, I get it. It's tricky. You know, they committed over the summer to giving Ten Hag what he wants, to giving him a full shot at this, and that's what they're doing. And they're going to do it for a while. And as I shared, you know, yesterday, and beforehand, you know, I don't think he's particularly that close to being sacked, you know, and I think that, you know, again, when I make the commentary like that could change with a huge beating by Brentford at home, of course it could, because there's a point where obviously like what your plans are and what you're forced to do because of just things going damaged beyond repair are two different equations. The plan is give him more time. The plan is we're still committed and just giving him, you know, everything that we say. And I spoke to somebody who gave me a good kind of perspective on this. Again, just from a sense of this is what's happening, whether I agree with it or not. You know, it's just that like they made the decision to be all in, that we're going to give him what he needs and that we're going to remove any distractions that we see and we're going to follow through on that. And that's what they're doing. It's obviously not working very quickly. But what I don't have a good alternative. You know, that is one of the things as well. I don't have a good alternative. And that's why I say I think they messed up in summer, not having the people in place, not making the decisions and not sorting this out earlier and getting just a fresh start. Because this was the worst case scenario, and it's happened, essentially, is that you keep Ten Hag and it goes bad very fast. That was always the worst case scenario. And then, as I said before, there was no good solution to that once that happened. So now you kind of are forced to ride it out. Thomas Tuchel didn't want the job. I've been saying this for a long time, and a lot of people were writing stories over the break that were just bullshit about Thomas Tuchel and his discussions with United or him being top choice. I think David Ornstein said in his piece yesterday that United were not interested in him over this break. You know, it is what it is. He didn't want the job. They don't want Southgate. They don't want Potter. The people that they could bring in as a manager are not here, but they're not available. So now they're in trouble. And this was, again, always the problem when I saw things like, you know, I mean, even people, respectable people like Andy Mitten said, hey, if it doesn't work, give him the season and sack him by November. Well, guess what? Now what? That was the problem with that plan and why I said it was a bad plan. And it was emotional and people weren't thinking it through. Now what? You sack him by November and now what? Now what happens? I don't know. Because you can't get who you want in November. You know, your backup plan might be Ruud van Nistelrooy, which it is. But then what? You know? No, eight. And the thing is that if we got a new manager in and they were in this position, it wouldn't be worse. Wouldn't be worse at all. Because they'd be 7 games into the job. Everybody gets more than 7 games. Ollie's first full season was horrendous until we brought Bruno Fernandes in. If you remember that. I mean, we got some big wins in December, I think, against Tottenham and stuff. But Solskjaer's first few games as a permanent manager and his first full season was terrible. And he was able to turn it around. Even in his second season, our start to the season was bad. But not this bad. Every manager gets time. When you have a fresh pair of eyes, you know that they're going to get time. You know that. You say, okay, look, we know it's going to take time to turn this around and to change things and all of that. When you have someone in their third season, they don't get that. And they shouldn't get the benefit of the doubt of it, of being this bad, you know, to start. So it's not the worst case scenario because in general, you know, if you had a new manager in, everybody could sit there and say, okay, fine. We had a bad 7 games. We're confused. We don't yet have our plan in place. Like, that's the funny part, right? If you look at the season and say, that looks like a team that is starting over, that has no tactical plan in there. If a manager had just arrived, you'd be sitting there and saying, that makes sense. But a manager being there for 3 years or 2.5 years now, you're not sitting there saying that makes sense, especially when they have so many of their own players that they've worked with previously. Then it becomes even worse, why they have not been able to implement things as of yet. So it would be a lot better. But regardless, at this point in time, he's pretty safe. But again, like I said, from a planning perspective, he's pretty safe. If we win some games, if we're climbing up the table a little bit, if we grind out some more points and it's not a disaster, I think in the short term, he's pretty safe. The position, that being said, it is not fiction that his position was under review. It was all discussed during the meeting. It was all discussed prior to the meeting. Now, one of the reasons he says that is that Sir Jim Ratcliffe spoke with him before the meeting. And the indication I got before the meeting was that he was likely to stay. So they probably told him that he was going to, because they already talked. I mean, they got together and all of that. But his position was reviewed. Everything that was happening was reviewed, and they decided to continue with it. And look, I'm as frustrated as anybody. Correct. Ornstein said that. United Reservations. Exactly. Exactly. They were not chasing him after the summer. He turned them down. And I kept saying, guys, he's not like, this isn't in a magically 8 weeks later, 10 weeks later, be all fine and dandy. He didn't want the job and he wanted time off. And now he's taking a job that's quite a bit less work in a respect in the interim. So for England, totally different dynamics for a national team. Yeah, it is what it is. I'm as frustrated. I see the quotes. I see what Ten Hag is saying. I think it's absurd, and I think that the insistence that last season was a success in the end is a failure is awful. Is an awful statement. But of course, he's saying that because the win in the FA Cup got him to, got him in the job, kept him in the job, and it won something. I mean, yeah, it is what it is there. So Tuchel not really an option for United. Nobody else is. So now what? What do you do? That's why this was the worst case scenario. There is no option. If you think that Van Nistelrooy will do better, you change it. If you're not sure if he'll do better, then you don't change it. Or you do when things get so bad, if things get so bad that it's just you have to get rid of the manager no matter what. We've not reached that point yet. If it can, because it's only been 7 games, if it continues the way that the last 7 games went for the next 7 games, then I believe they would make a change, yes. But if they think that we're going to do a little bit better and we're climbing up into the top half of the table and we're still in the cups, I don't think a change is going to happen. They will pursue, and one of the things that they did decide upon in the meeting is the long-term plan. The long-term plan of if they're making a change at the end of the season and barring a very miraculous turnaround, I say miraculous because I don't think anybody expects it, barring a miraculous turnaround, they will be looking to a new manager next year. And I don't think that should be a surprise to anybody. I don't think that's destabilizing. We're in 14th. If we continue how we're continuing through this year, everybody knows, even if Ten Hag survives the season, that he's not going to be here long term. So they've decided that they, on what they want to do there. And they have names and they have people and they have decided on their ideal manager. And there's different qualifications about this, right? And yeah, I'll talk about Ruben Amorim. There's different qualifications on this, which is that they, there's people like Xabi Alonso. You got a confirmation, I think it was from Sammy Mockbell during this last week or last couple of days, that he was someone they were interested in him, but he didn't want to leave Leverkusen. If he had decided to take the job, I think that now if he called him up and said, oh yeah, I'm open to it. And they'll be keeping in touch with agents and people like that for sure. And if people like someone like him was open to it, they would take it. They would do it, and he would be hired. But in general, they have a more specific succession plan. Call it a contingency plan if you want, rather than saying it's guaranteed that Ten Hag gets sacked or something just for the sake of things. And from what I can gather, there's a similarity of the candidates. They want someone who's going to be there for the long term. They want someone who's forward thinking. They want someone who's a good coach. And yes, Thomas Frank is of interest. He was of interest last summer. He was of interest last year. I spoke a lot about Thomas Frank through the whole process early on in summer, before they decided, of him being someone they really admire, and they do. I'm not sure that he's on the top of the list, but he's someone they do really admire. And through the season, if he continues, and I think he's done really well this season so far for Brentford, based on how things go, I could see him, his stock rising for sure. Kieran McKenna is someone they've been interested in. Ruben Amorim, I said yesterday, is not on the top of the list, and he's not. They are interested in him. They have been watching him, but I believe there are some concerns about him specifically. Honus, probably pronouncing it wrong, whatever, is someone that they are as well keeping an eye on. And I'm sure there's going to be more, but at the moment, I can say that they do know what they want to do if they replace Ten Hag. They do know what they want to do. They have decided. It's not De Zerbi, but they have decided. It's not Tuchel. It's not Southgate. It's not Graham Potter. They have decided what they want to do. So if things continue, I would expect them to be to move along things in earlier before the end of the season and not do things like they did last year. So, but honestly, I would not be surprised, as I said, if we're kind of crawling along, not as bad as it's been, if we're crawling along to see it improve, to see him stay, and for the rest of the season, and then just make that long-term change next year. Yeah, and then there's Iraola as well. I know that they admire him, so maybe it's him. Edin Terzic, I know we've seen a number of links to him from Germany. I'm a little suspicious of some of those links. He was somebody that they contacted or had some kind of eyes on a long time ago, but I think that would be more likely an exploration of if he was a manager that could come in the interim, if they were to make a change mid-season. And they have a plan there as well, but I still think it'll be Van Nistelrooy primarily. So, yeah. They've at least done their succession planning now, and again, I would argue, like I've seen both ways. People will say, look, they don't have a replacement. That's why, James, understand that. That's it. So we don't have to go on about it. And that's true. I just think that they should have planned better. And I think that it's all about the way that they went about it in summer that turned things. But as it is, here we are. We could beat it to death for endless amounts of times. Good afternoon, Marcus. About, Ten Hag staying. Right now he's staying. His position will continue to be under scrutiny because it is, but they're also not going to talk to, they're also not going to be doing a thing where they go to Ten Hag and say, oh, you're under a bunch of pressure. You got to win this game or you're sacked, because I don't think that that's the way they're going to operate either. It's going to be business as usual for Ten Hag, and they're going to assess it when they assess it, and they're going to deliver the verdict, or they're not going to say anything that implies he's under any sort of danger. They're not going to do, and I think that part of it is correct, that you don't want it to be this drama. It's like, from a coaching perspective, you just get along with your work, and your boss comes in one day and says you're no longer in the job, or your boss comes in and says you're fine. They're not going to be putting them on notice and doing things like that. I don't think that that's how it works, because once you do that, I think it's already over. So I don't think that that's going to happen. And we knew that. We saw that with Jose. We saw that with Ollie. They both knew it was over. So what's the point? Why do that? They both knew it was over for weeks, if not months. And I think they admitted as such. So why do that? What's the point? There's no point putting a manager on notice and like that, and they're not going to do that either. They'll assess things as they assess them. Until then, they're, as Ten Hag says, sticking to the plan. Sticking to the plan. Issue was Ashworth was not there. So, and correct. I agree with that. I still think they got it wrong, though. That I said was a consideration from them, which is that they didn't want to make a huge decision on that and get the wrong person. I agree. That was the issue. And a big part of it was not getting the person beforehand. A couple of other things that were mentioned in just keeping with the article, I guess, for a little bit, is I've talked about the thing with Casemiro being upset by the thing with Casemiro being upset for some time. That is something I've said before. He was bothered by that, the communication of things, all of that, and more on that in a bit. And Ten Hag wouldn't be, because they're not, like I said, they're not going to sit there and tell him, oh, your job's under threat or anything like that. Who would I have brought in over summer? I would have gone all in on anyone, frankly. But I think that their job was, if they wanted Tuchel, to convince him. If they wanted De Zerbi, to convince him, whether I wanted him or not. If they went so far but failed to convince them, then I think that that's a mistake. The issue is Ed, overall, as I've said before, is that they should never have done that if they weren't going to just go with it and make the hire. They should never have done that. They should never have done it. The way that they like, here's the thing too, right? I think you can hire and you could have sacked, and it wouldn't make that much of a difference. Yeah, I think it's kind of that simple. They held back. It's just the way that it was all gone about. Like, if they had said, we're just going to stick with Ten Hag for another year, then so be it, But the fact that they went down the route that they went down, to me, it makes it a disaster. I think it's impossible, because no matter what Ten Hag says, he's not their guy. And I think that this is one of those things where, like, there isn't 100% right solution. So let's say you have all these people coming in, you're replacing everybody, you replace the manager, and you get someone. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But now what's happened? Like, I think by keeping Ten Hag, unfortunately, it was guaranteed not to work. And if you get someone new, you have like a 50% chance to work. There's it's like the three doors problem, the Monty whatever it's called, the Monty Hall problem, whatever it is, right? Which is that it's almost like you just get better odds by switching, period. You got to change the door. You got to pick the other door. It's just like a logical thing, because it was guaranteed to me to not work with Ten Hag once you decided he wasn't your guy. And when you have a new people coming in and all of that. Because he was only there because he was already there. And everybody knew he wasn't their guy. And everybody knew that they had doubts. And you have a guy in Jason Wilcox who was there to deliver an assessment. He delivered it, and they ignored it in the end. They didn't follow through on it. And everybody knows that, including Ten Hag. So it was like, this was the only route that was almost guaranteed failure. If you switch it, you have you have a chance of it succeeding, even if you have to make a change later on down the road. But yeah. Anyway, it is what it is in that respect. So yeah, I think they'll deal with it later. The other thing is on Bruno Fernandes, right? I did tell you Bruno Fernandes was ready to leave. I said that all summer, that he was interested in leaving, and then he was playing, for a new contract. And yeah, bringing in the expert and ignoring him, and didn't follow through on what he recommended, especially when it got public and he was talking and interviewing managers. That's crazy. That's a huge error. Like, you either do it or you don't. You cannot be half in and half out. And to a degree, that's what they're trying to correct now. They've committed to giving Ten Hag the year, so they're kind of not half in, half out. So they're kind of all going with it. They're going all in. But yes, Bruno was ready to leave. I mean, he was, yeah. They gave him an extension. He wanted more money, but he was ready to leave. He was talking to other clubs, doing all of that. So, yeah, that was what happened. Okay, so I think I've covered all of that in depth. We'll talk about the team, the vote, and the injuries shortly. Top 4 would be an accomplishment, yeah. Does Bruno leave at this? Maybe, yeah. Look, the thing about that as well is like they could sell him. 1 second. It's not like they couldn't sell him if someone came in, but it would probably have to be Saudi, I mean, at the end of the day. But I want to talk about January, okay? Because, you know, one of the things is that they're still overall, as I said, they're still working on their plans. They're still operating. They're still doing things. They're still making their long-term plans, and it's all regardless of how things are going. And in January, I believe that we will do business. I believe we will do business in January, and I think that they are discussing it. I think they're discussing it, and I know they're discussing it, and I've said this before in January that the left back issue is one that's been setting off alarm bells. Luke Shaw, you know, was supposed to be back to like people kept saying, oh, it's the first international break. No, the second international break. No, now it's the third one. Luke Shaw's not coming back anytime soon. Let's be real. He's still not in training. I get they say he's been steady progress. He's steady progress 12 weeks into a 3-week injury. That's not steady progress. He hasn't played in 6 months for us. It's 8 months maybe. Left back is a huge issue. And there's very little confidence in Luke Shaw, despite what has been said, on it all being good. Now, are they being careful? All of that? Yes. But the problem is that Luke Shaw has a metal rod in his leg, and he's screwed because of that. Because no matter what you do, that leg will never be the same. And you're always going to have extra strain on the muscles because of the difference in the flexing and in all of that stuff. It's just like, that's just a fact, okay? It's just, that is what it is. It is what it is. And we have to deal with that. So, I'm not saying he won't be back at all, but like, he's not going to be back anytime soon. You know, he's not even in training yet. And then they're going to have to ease him in. And then, you know, by then it's probably near the next international break. It is what it is. And then Yara will be back. So we'll be getting good players back and things. But the left back is a situation. The midfield is still a situation. Casemiro, as we know, is somebody that they had hoped to move on in the summer, and they would still like to move him on. Christian Eriksen is someone that could still move on, that could have been moved on in summer. Now, I know he's been Ten Hag's favorite toy recently, and he's performed well, but you have this huge gaping problem every time Christian Eriksen plays, which is that he can only play half the game. And by half the game, I mean he can only play on the offensive half of the game. He cannot play in the defensive half of the game, and it's a Band-Aid that creates other problems. And that's not, for me, an insult on Christian Eriksen, but for a team that needs to control and dominate games and do all of that, it's still a problem. And he's walking for free at the end of the year. And he did look to leaving in the summer. So we might do business there, and you know, and I think that there could be moves there. There could be moves there. We've been looking at younger midfielders. As I spoke about, we've been looking at younger midfielders. It's been a huge priority. So when you look at like the overall plan, we need a left back, we need younger midfielders, we need a center back. Well, center back won't be dealt with now because we're very unlikely to be selling Maguire or losing Lindelof during the season. But left back and the midfield could be addressed sooner. They could be addressed in January. Some of it, not all of it. I'm not saying we're doing a huge amount of business, but I think we could do some business there, and those options are being evaluated, you know, in those areas, because we still need someone. You know, Mason Mount can't stay fit. Casemiro and Eriksen, it's a problem. We still don't have enough midfielders there, and the fact that Ugarte hasn't been integrated really at all is kind of ridiculous. But regardless, yeah, I could see a situation where continuing with the overall plan of the club. Look, this is one of the factors that I think is a little bit interesting. One of the dynamics that I think is interesting, and you tell me what you think about this. If they're saying, okay, we'll get a new, we might stick with Ten Hag for the season, but it's not working. It's not a throwaway, but it's kind of like it's not going great, and we're probably going to make a change later. Then why not do business in January? You're not going to sit there and say, well, we have to keep Eriksen because Ten Hag relies on him. Who cares? He's not your manager long term. What he's doing isn't working. Our results suck. We're going to do what we need to do on our long-term plans for the club, regardless. Even if Ten Hag is staying, then we're going to do what we can for the long term regardless. And in the long term, what do we know? We know we need a left back. We know Casemiro and Eriksen are on their way out at some point, and so we need midfielders. So they could look to those plans in January. If Lindelof had an offer, they'd probably let him go and look to a center back then. So, I'm saying that they are very much looking at doing business in they're kind of looking at doing business in January, regardless. And they have been looking at a lot of young midfielders. So like we've talked about Nipan, we've talked about Mastentuono. These are players that are interested, these are players that they're interested in, young players. Some people have been talking about Angel Gomez, asking about him. I don't think that United will go for him. But there are a couple of clubs in England who are going to try to sign him in January. So just keep an eye out for that. So yeah, I don't think that business in January has to, you could say that it could have a meaningful goal for the end of the season, maybe, but it might just be that it's a good time. Here's where it gets intriguing. The window for where Nipan plays is January. That's what makes it interesting, not summer. The window is January. Same thing goes for Mastentuono, right? Because the South American clubs also operate on a January to December one. So it's actually potentially a time to go for those younger players for the future rather than in summer. If we're going out of, the major, I don't think we're going to make necessarily some huge signings from the Premier League in January for the midfield or anything like that. But if we do go for some of these younger players who play in other leagues, January might actually be the right time to do something. That's important. And yeah, look, someone like Nipan might not be ready. That's totally fine. But that doesn't mean you might not want to get a deal for him done if you decide he's the right guy. Or that he's someone you want in the long term. So anyway, it's there's a lot of interesting dynamics there, but United are ready to kind of do business in January if they can, not opportunities. This is the difference, right? Is we're not signing on these emergency-esque type of things, like someone to try to salvage the year. If we can do our long-term business in January, then we will. For example, you take someone like Christian Eriksen, okay? 200,000 a week, leaving for free. If you can get a little money and clear his wages off, you can improve your PSR position if you're signing a young player during that time on much lower wages and on a decent fee. You can actually improve your PSR position for this year while making that signing in January. So that might be one of the things that's considered. Same goes for Casemiro. If you could get 350,000 off the books and then sign someone else. There was a name, a defensive midfielder, a younger one, who was a bit more of a defensive one. I can't remember off the top of my head, but that United are looking at, that I've spoken before. And those deals can improve. That's where they can be a good, sensible January deal, is that they can improve your PSR position now versus later in summer because of the wage savings. When you're talking about older, no, I mean, someone right now we're still interested in, and I have mentioned their name before, but I can't remember it. You can improve your current PSR position. You can improve your current PSR position with moving some of the older, higher wage players. And then I think who are those names? Eriksson and Casemiro, right? Those are your older midfield players where we're going to replace them eventually, or we were talking about replacing them. So if you can, the sooner you can move them, you actually save money on your PSR position, regardless of Champions League, regardless of all of that. So those are people you'd want to look at. Not Wharton. There's somebody else, and I can't remember right now. I'm sure I'll remember it later. But he's more of a deeper midfielder. Hackney is one, but for example, I'm not saying Hackney is ready. But if you could get Hackney in and move Eriksson, you are going to save money. If you can get Hackney in and save and move Casemiro, you could save money. You will improve your PSR position for those 6 months because the wages from Casemiro cost you enormous amounts of money. Chris Rigg, okay, is another name, right? Yeah. Chris Rigg is another name that United have been watching, and I mean, maybe someone like that. I'm just saying, maybe someone like that. You get him in early, get ahead of the queue in summer. If you can move one of your older players and you actually improve your PSR position. So just think with that. That is something that is being thought of by the club at this point in time in terms of their overall planning, is if there's a way to shift some of the older players on big wages that are not a part of the future, the sooner you do it, the better. If you're replacing them with a younger player that you can sign, it will improve your financial position and continue the plan. And if we're not chasing, some big goal at the end of the season where we need Casemiro's experience, though I don't think we do anyway, then so be it. Then there's going to be, if we're floating around poor in the league, then you get more opportunities for young players to get into the team, than you would otherwise when you're in like a dogfight for top 4, which I don't think we're going to be in, frankly, with how things are going. So, it's somewhat about, could we turn some of the negative into an opportunity to do something? Could we turn some of the negative into doing something? Now, I saw something on Adam Wharton because he hasn't impressed me either. Apparently, he needs surgery on his groin. And that would make a lot of sense, that he's had an issue since the Euros where he needs surgery. That was apparently said by Fulham, or being reported today at Fulham. Crystal Palace, Glasner was who said it. That he might need surgery on an injury he's had since the Euros. And that would make a lot of sense because he's looked like shit this season. He's looked very slow, very immobile. And he's not that poor of a player, but that would make a lot of sense. That would make a lot of sense if that's why he's struggled so much, because he's not that bad of a player, but he has looked really bad when I've watched him. Anyway, yeah, they're looking at business. They're looking at business that is potentially for January. They are. So we'll keep an eye on that, on how that develops. And when we get into the next international break, they're going to firm those plans up. But a left back and potentially shifting Casemiro and Eriksson to bring in a younger midfielder is something I know that is being explored and is being looked at. So we'll see. We'll see where that develops. We've got a bit of time. We've got a bit of time until then. And some of the names that I've mentioned, I think, could be opportunity signings in January that could get minutes later in the year, but could also improve our financial standing. I don't think Frankie de Jong fits that. Heavy wages, horrible injury. Don't think he fits that. That's all good stuff in terms of the long term. I know it's depressing. It's hard for all of us to feel like, how do we move past this when our situation has been so bad this season? How do we enjoy the rest of the year and these games and all of that? But I'm hoping, ideally, there are things that they can do to improve upon the situation overall. Alvaro Fernandez, I would bring him back. Yeah, I would buy him. I would buy him. Apparently, we do have a buyback. I mean, it's been debated, but and some of the people I spoke to said no, but it seems they have doubts and that perhaps we do have a buyback. If we do, hell yeah, I would trigger it. We need goal scorers. I don't think we do. Not in that we don't need goal scorers, but I think we need to change how we create opportunities, and our players will start scoring goals. I think that's the biggest deal. Højlund can finish every single chance that he gets. We know that. He's a top-class finisher. Rashford can score goals if he's not getting rotated at 45 minutes. Let's get goals through the squad and create a lot better chances, Let's do that. And I think it'll solve a lot of our goal scoring issues. And because we need these players to develop. Yes, we have young players who need to develop more and everything to score goals. But if we can create better opportunities, then we'll get a better chance. I don't think we should have signed Neves. I've seen him be good in Ligue 1, and I've seen him struggle against more physical and bigger teams. I think he's tiny, and I think it's a real problem, and I think it's why we shouldn't sign Angel Gomez either. We do not need to downsize our squad. Our team is not that big, and we signed some big players this year. It'll help when Lenny Yoro comes back in, who's tall, who's big. I think it actually makes quite a difference when Xerxes is in there because we can actually win some long balls and some high balls. Our team is small. It's still relatively small compared to some of the big teams. I'm talking height, and I'm talking height. And I think Neves was awful against Arsenal, in my opinion, when I watched him. I think he got completely overrun by the physicality of Arsenal. Completely overrun in that game and completely decimated by them. And I think he would be bad in the Premier League. But I think that's one of the issues we struggle with. You know, the Bruno, Eriksson, Kobbie Mainoo is way worse. Way worse. It's that's one of the reasons it's such a bad idea. Is the physicality is so lacking, and I'm not surprised Kobbie Mainoo picking up an injury. I'm really not surprised because I've been talking about this a lot recently. If you recall, Kobbie Mainoo being the busiest midfielder in the Premier League defensively, and he is. That's what he's become, and he's going to keep picking up muscle injuries that way. It's too much work, and it's kind of a shame. It's a shame. Neves might replace Kobbie Mainoo. He cannot play next to him. That's why it's not worth the money. We need someone to play next to Kobbie Mainoo, to take the burden off of him so that he's not doing Conte levels of defensive work. Why are we asking him to do that? That's crazy. I've been talking about this since like the second week, that is crazy that we've been asking him to do that and putting him in position. And now he's injured. So you got what you wanted by doing so and setting up the team this way, from Eric. That was the natural consequence of this, is that Kobbie Mainoo was going to get injured. That's why you had to get Ugarte in there to do the dirty work. Whether he's playing poorly, whether he needs to integrate, it doesn't matter. You need him to play so that you can free up Kobbie Mainoo to do what he's better at. But the problem is that we have to play Eriksson now and Bruno to create things, and that's an issue. It makes no sense. It's nonsensical management. That part of it is really, really poorly managed. It's just poorly managed. It just is. So anyway, let's go into the team. This was what you all voted for last time. So we're going to do the vote again this time to round this all out. This is what people voted for last time. They thought, hey, why don't we slot Xerxes into the 10 role and drop Bruno. So I'm going to go, position by position. This is what you want. Obviously, we have injuries now, so some of this is going to change. At striker, Højlund or Xerxes. So let's go position by position and figure this out. And see what we want. So people still want Højlund to start. I have a strong suspicion. I mean, yeah, we obviously, I thought we played poorly against Aston Villa, frankly. We played deep and all of that, but I think that Højlund is going to win, but I also think that the reason is not necessarily because Xerxes' final pass is horrible. I can't agree with that. I think his final pass has been great. I think he's created some really good chances. He put Garnacho in. He's done a few other things. I think Xerxes is a much better overall player. I think that, obviously, the reason I think this was voted for in the first place is because it was like, Bruno's bad. Let's just get Xerxes and Højlund into the team so we have some finishers. our midfield has been poor in lightweight for years. I totally agree. But then you know who we get rid of is Fred. He was actually a physical player who would get into every duel with abandon. Whether he won them all or not doesn't matter, but he was extremely disruptive and a never quit attitude to the opposition. We get rid of him. And then we have huge holes show up. We have huge holes that show up in the team. Huge holes. It was if you put Fred into the team that we had last year, we would have done way better. These massive gaps in the midfield, he masked them with his energy. But the thing is that Ugarte can be that player without being so chaotic on the ball. But we won't play him for whatever reason. I mean, I think we know the reason. To cover the holes and to do it. And it's a player who was signed for his tenacity in the midfield. But we don't want tenacity because we're so desperate to have somebody score goals. Fred did 100% mask a ton of issues. He masked a load of issues. Does that mean Fred was the ideal guy for the long run? No. But he masked a huge part of the issues. A huge part of the issues. Let's go left wing. Outside of 1 week, outside of 1 week, Rashford's continued to win this. And he's been good this season. I think that Rashford is deservedly, continues to get his place on the left wing. Like, the thing is what I say about Fred is pretty clear. I know exactly who he is. Yeah, Rashford needs to be rotated after 2 weeks off. Oh, I get a headache, man, just thinking about some of these things that have happened. Okay. This one is fine, so we'll leave it as such. No, he showed up for a lot more than 2 games. It's just what he provided was, here's the thing, right? People said, well, Fred's the reason we can't control games. When he played bad games, that was why we couldn't control games. But then he stopped playing and we didn't control games. It got worse. Because what he did off the ball, every game was elite. 100%. And elite is the right word for it. What he did off the ball was elite. Now, sometimes his on the ball was so bad, again, as the top level, but he was a huge net positive for the team. I don't think enough to take you to a title-winning team, but he was absolutely a net positive in the team, and it was worse without him. Our form dropped off a cliff, even after the League Cup when he stopped playing. You can go look. So even one of the reasons our form dropped off a cliff. What he did off the ball was huge for keeping us in the game. The dirty work, the dark arts, the things that you don't always pay attention to, he was very consistent at that. Where he was inconsistent was on the ball, understand. But, and of course you want a player who's more consistent on the ball, but who does all those things off the ball too. We don't have that now. Well, we could, because Ugarte could be that player. He's actually a very consistent on-ball player if he can play. That's why he was signed anyway. We'll see. He's played like 190, but that is who he can be. That is who he can be if we will get to play him. Because he has been a very consistent on-ball performer, not like some elite player, but consistent. He's one of the highest percentage passers, a good switcher of the ball, good carrier of the ball, very consistent and solid in that respect. But we won't play him because we have to play Bruno Fernandes all the time and Eriksen to create goals. It's just backwards thinking. That's the thing that bothers me more than anything else. All right, Ahmad's going to win this one. All right, so at the 10, are we going Bruno? Are we going Eriksen? Are we going Xerxes? They changed managers, David. They changed managers, didn't they? They changed managers. I don't think it's particularly a red flag. I think they changed managers. And one who didn't want him anymore in what he brought to the table and why they signed him. Wow, this is quite an interesting poll. It's nearly dead even between Bruno, Eriksen, and Xerxes for the 10. You know, the thing with Bruno is he's been so poor for us, and off the ball, I don't think he's been any better than Eriksen. You know? Yeah, it's not the style we're going to play either, though, David. You know? That's the thing. I think Bruno's been terrible. I think he's actually one of the biggest problems, too, off the ball. His pressing is frenetic and chaotic. Doesn't actually help us. He does play better for Portugal. Yeah. International football is different. It's always different. Now, I'm not saying that that doesn't mean our system is bad. It is. It's a better system for him in Portugal. But I guarantee you the way he presses is different there, or he's asked to. Everything doesn't have to flow through him. They play as a team. I've watched them. They overlap fullbacks. I called that out because I tweeted that like the last international break. There was a bunch of plays. The fullbacks are running beyond the wingers, and you can find the little passes between the lines and all of that. Bruno can do that. But we don't do that. So it's not even his fault. I still wouldn't play Bruno because we're just not going to play a game that suits him, or it's just going to be crazy. All right, Bruno's going to win that one. A slim lead, a slim win, but Bruno's going to win that one. So in the midfield, I'm going to put up partnerships, and obviously because we have injuries, it's going to be different. So midfield. So we're going to do... We didn't actually get any update. You know what's really almost embarrassing? Maybe I'm being overreactive about this. Maybe I am. Ugarte's name didn't come up in the press conference about the injuries. I thought he was injured. He's had apparently a light recovery session and is recovering from a little something. Ten Hag doesn't even bring him up in the press conference about injuries. He wasn't even mentioned. So we still don't even know if he's actually fit. I wonder if Ten Hag cares. Right, he said he did comment if Ugarte was available. But Ugarte, here's the point. Specifically, Ugarte had some sort of little issue in recovery. His availability was not mentioned in the press conference this morning. It's like a little oversight. But it stood out to me because I was like, wait, everybody else was mentioned. Every other player was mentioned. From Cobby to Mount to Shaw to everyone had an update in the last day or two. Not Ugarte. And he's the only player we still don't know if he's available this weekend or not. That bothers me. It does. Anyway, we don't have a lot of options, so here's what we've got. Let's assume he's available for the purposes of this. Let's assume he's available because they didn't say he's out. Let's assume he's available. Who should we set up in the midfield? Yeah, I mean, I would agree, David. The thing is that you don't have to buy players a manager wants. But that's where I would say, that to me, the Ugarte thing is like this huge red flag to me where it's like, it's all good if you want to say you're committed to the thing and the plan and all of that. But to me, it seems like you clearly have a manager who's undermining what you wanted and what you discussed. And in that respect, I don't see how they can accept it and not be addressed. And not be addressed and reprimanded. I think Casemiro Ugarte would be great, by the way. I actually think it's a good midfield because you can let Casemiro go crazy then. And he's actually quite good in more creative, freer areas. But that's what I don't get. Like, if you kept him, fine. But then if you agreed and you sign a player like Ugarte and he just won't integrate him and he doesn't play him in 2 games before the end of the year, and physical games that you needed him in too, by the way, that blows my mind. It blows my mind that he needed to be integrated already. So we didn't end up getting Kobbie Mainoo injured already. He needed to be integrated already. And that part of it, that's like this, like I can almost accept some of the things that have happened and say, it's okay. We can it's a bummer, but they're sticking with it. And I get the logic. I can accept almost all of it, except that. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. Because he's also a player I know particularly who is incredibly fit and physical. The difference with it's not even that here. Yeah. Good question. I want to actually look that up. It was similar with Casemiro, but not the same. It wasn't really the same. When he arrived. But he was also was actually not fit immediately. When Casemiro arrived, he was not in the squad one game. The next game, 10 minutes, 31 minutes, 10 minutes, 31 minutes, and then he started every game after that. So he played in every game. Every game. He did not miss a single one. And he started immediately in the Europa League on September 8th. So he was integrated and starting every Europa game by September 8th. And in the league, he was starting every game by October 9th. This is excessive. This is extremely excessive. To not even get appearances in 2 games is insane. In the last 2 games is insane. It's insane. It's nonsensical. It's completely nonsensical. Yeah. It's nonsensical. Especially because we needed him. So unfortunately with Kobbie Mainoo injured, we've got to do this. I don't think this is that bad, by the way. Like, I don't think that's that bad. I think that's actually a pretty decent partnership. But, yeah. Yeah. The fullbacks we're going to leave. We don't have any other options. But, and at center back, we also don't have any options, do we? Maguire's injured. So it's going to be De Ligt and Lissandro, right? That's all we've got. I mean, maybe Johnny Evans. You guys want to vote between Lissandro and Johnny Evans? Sure. All right. I don't think it's particularly even that that off the wall to vote for Johnny Evans right now. I'll put Lindelof in there too. Evan. Oops. I left it at Evan. Sorry. That's not even... I know that's the crazy part. Johnny Evans probably deserves to win this over Lissandro. Now, that being said, when Johnny Evans played against Aston Villa, we of course set up into like a very much more of a mid-block, deep kind of... It was very much more pragmatic. And it might be abuse if we continue to start him on his body. I don't think it'll hold up if we keep doing it. You know, if it's not once in an occasion. But on an individual basis, after 2 weeks off, yeah, I think Johnny Evans deserves a start. It's kind of wild. I don't think we had expected that, did we? You know? Lissandro would have been better in that Villa match setup too. You're totally correct. Because we're not running backwards, getting exposed. And again, Dalot was overlapping, right? Here's the thing, right? I don't think that Evans being man of the match against Villa, showing how bad we are, is actually an insult to him, because I said it too, and I stand by it. It's because the way that Johnny Evans plays, which is on personality, is great. It doesn't matter. If you put Johnny Evans for 90 minutes in that game against Porto, in that first half, you would have been destroyed. Run at, just absolutely destroyed. a lot of the games that we have played where we've set up, doesn't matter how much passion John. I know he came on as a sub, but that was after Porto had settled in, right? That would never have worked with Johnny Evans. It didn't work with Lissandro, but it wouldn't work with Johnny Evans either. Where Johnny Evans was really good is when we're setting up deep, he'll give everything, and he's big and he's physical, and and he's still a good passer of the ball. Yeah, I'm still hoping for Mazraoui to play left back. It's still nonsensical to me, Let him fucking overlap, okay? Next international break for Euro. Let him overlap. I'm going to give this poll like 30 more seconds just because it's really close. So make sure you vote. Yeah, Mazraoui's fit. I'm hoping he plays. Let him get the overlap. All right, Lissandro wins it by a nose hair. So this is what we've got. So this is the vote. So yeah, I mean, I think this is most people voted for Lissandro. I mean, he won the vote. But no, I mean, look. Again, we talk about this one more time here. Is that it all depends what we want to do. In the last game, we overlapped Dallo, and it made us a lot more defensively solid because we didn't allow those attacks. Instead of inverting all game and creating this issue, Dallo was with Martinez being isolated. Now, Villa were pretty bad, mind you. I think we were bad too. But instead of this inversion nonsense, Dallo stayed wide in the last game, and we kept our shape a bit more. And he even gave us some attacking angles early on, but defensively we were just much less exposed. So that's the main thing I'm hoping for in terms of a change. If we want to stop being embarrassed, if we want to start seeing at least even some semi-decent performances, is two things, which I think would change what we do. One, go back to overlapping fullbacks, keeping the shape, and get Ugarte going. And stop trying to play 2-10s. Like if we just did those three things, I think we'd actually play decent football this year. I don't think that we would be, stunning or anything, but I think that if we just did those three things, we would at least see the strengths of our squad getting to show a bit more. The strengths of our players getting to show a bit more and win games. I think that it would just suit us all so much better. So hopefully we do that. Hopefully we can do that. Yeah, and it would move Rashford in more narrow, give him support on that side. I mean, we know what he can do. We know what he can do and what we can do, and that we can get goals if we can get them on goal more often. But it's also just, we would just see players playing to more strengths, a lot less weaknesses in the team. If that was happening. So yeah, I mean, those are the three major things that I see that could be corrected so easily. I think that, like, we've discussed it at length. We all know where we all stand on Ten Hag at this point in time in terms of the long term, having huge doubts. But if we didn't, this is a good team even still, right? This should be a good team. If we can win the fights in the midfield with physicality and actually having hard work, if we can stop exposing our center backs to excess threat, and if we can still use our fullbacks to interplay with our wingers, where we have a lot of talent, there are few players on the planet that can defend one-on-one, Rashford and Ahmad and Garnacho even, and get them into positions where they're not 1 against 3, but they actually have support. If we can give Bruno simple passes to play through the lines rather than having to go for the heroic pass, if we can do those things, at the least, we can look like a decent team and a competent team. But that's what we should be able to do. And so that would be my hope. Because there's no reason we can't do that now. That could all be done in one instant. It's not like they don't know how to do that. You pick the right team and you stop the inversion nonsense, and a lot of it happens naturally. A lot of that happens naturally. You know, if you stop instructing your fullback to invert, then naturally they're going to be in these positions. And we know they can. I mean, Dalot did it against Aston Villa. So if you just pick hard workers in the midfield instead of Eriksen and Bruno every game, it'll happen. Naturally, we will be better. And yeah, we will. We will just be naturally better. We will. We'll win more challenges. We'll win more balls. We'll be more compact, and we'll have more support for our players. And I think it just plays to their natural strengths. I still think we'd be lacking because we don't see the elite coaching patterns and things in place. But I think we would see more of their natural talent of our players coming through that way. So hopefully we can see that. Anything else? Oh yeah. Last thing. Join me tomorrow for the watch along. It'll be fun. Link is below. You don't even have to sign up to watch anymore. You can just watch, and then we'll do the tactics board ahead of time, all that. But you can just watch. You just have to sign in and join to chat. And I definitely recommend you do sign up, but if you could just click to watch, if you just want to just try it for the first time. But as many people as we can, I would please, join. It's really great. It's a really cool platform, and it's been a really good experience. The tactics board and the things we've been able to do there. Okay, everybody. So yeah, again, we've talked about the Ten Hag stuff. We've talked about them forming up their plans. We've talked about them forming up their plans for the long term, for a manager, for all of that. If things continue as they are. Talked about January and the business that they are potentially looking at getting done in January. So. Yeah, I'm trying to keep I'm frustrated, but I'm trying to keep somewhat of a positive view on this, because I kind of have to. I mean, this isn't my job, but it is kind of my job, and I'm going to keep informing you and being involved, and I have to be able to have some enthusiasm. I'm as frustrated as anybody else in how everything's going, but I got to keep some enthusiasm for things, and just the hope that at least we could see a decent season, at least we could see some changes that are logical and sensible, that would allow us to see some of the strengths of our players, get some more development in place, and then, maybe get some business done for the future, in the left back and in the midfield. Getting players in we want in the future in January would be very nice. That would be very nice. So thank you all. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you all for the kind words. And hopefully we see something more entertaining tomorrow, because with Thomas Frank and Brentford, we know how bad it can be for us, and I'm hoping it's not that bad. I'm hoping it's not, but we will see. Okay, see you all later. Have a good one.